What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show. And today I want to bring you guys an interview with a really interesting individual who I first met on the Facebook fan page. This is a guy by the name of Mike. He's been rocking with the After Prison Show for a good little while now, and this dude has a really interesting story to share. Starting at a young age, back when he was like 15 or 16 years old, getting heavily involved in the game, out there living that street life and making a lot of money while doing so at the same time. But ultimately, Mike would end up going to prison, serving a 6-year prison sentence. And during that time, a lot of crazy things would take place in that guy's life, including this guy sharing with me that he made like $17,000 while in prison. Folks, I got the opportunity today to share with you an interview that we are doing with Mike. You guys are going to begin to hear some of his story, and it's my hope to be able to bring you guys more of this individual. But right now, I want to introduce all of you to this guy, Mike, so that he can share with us his story. Mike, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me here. Me and you have been talking for a little while and first got in contact through the Facebook fan page, and it really means a lot that you're sitting here willing to share your story with us today.
Thank you.
You're a dude who's been through a lot of really crazy things. You shared quite a bit of the experiences with me through messages and on Facebook. And I really want to give you an opportunity to talk about, what you've been through. At a very young age, you were involved in, the drug game, and you would end up going to prison for a pretty long time and went through a lot of crazy things with that as well. But I really want you to just start from the beginning and just tell us about your youth.
Okay, as about 15 years old, I got in a lot of trouble from about 12 to 15. About 15 years old, I got sent to a boys camp, boys school, pretty much, Indiana boys school. I done 6 months there, two different times. I ended up getting out, I believe, when I turned 17, and pretty much hit the streets running as far as the drug game, and all my friends while I was gone pretty much, got wrapped up in selling drugs, and wasn't a whole lot of doing drugs at that time. It was more selling drugs, so I hit streets running.
And where are you from, Mike? Talk about where you're from.
I'm from Indiana.
I don't know much about that area out there, but I guess, just from hearing what you're sharing with us, that drugs are a pretty big deal out there.
Yeah, it's gotten real bad. In this county and a lot of the counties around it, it's gotten real bad, especially since the synthetics, the fentanyl and the spice and stuff like that's hit. A lot of overdoses and a lot of deaths been happening lately.
Well, when you were young and, going back to when you were about 15, 16 years old, you would really start getting knee-deep involved in the game. And, talk to us a little bit about how all of that came about and, some of what you experienced during that time.
Well, when I got out of boys' school, like I said, my friends were doing their thing, and a couple of them, I had some good connections. I don't know if you really want me to get in on what type of drugs or...
Yeah, what type of stuff were you getting involved with?
My best friend had a really good cocaine connection, and I started selling cocaine for probably 4 or 5 years, and I was getting it at a great price, and I was pretty much burning the town up. Well, once it got to the point where they was on me in this town, I started moving to a few surrounding counties, because due to being locked up, I met a lot of people in surrounding counties. So I was going to a smaller town called Newcastle, Indiana, where the prison I originally ended up is at. And I happened to take a few ounces into a guy, and he brought me back some cash and 4,000 volumes. And I'm like, man, where the hell did you get all these volumes? So he proceeds to tell me this story about this guy in Mexico, a cab driver. I'm sure a lot of people's heard that before. And I was like, look, man, you got to put me in touch with this guy. And it was in El Paso, which is right over the border of Juarez, which is now the deadliest place in the world. But at that time, it was rough. And, I mean, it was the slums, but it wasn't that bad. So he ends up putting me in touch with him. And after that, the Oxycontins and stuff like that became popular. And my strategy I was using is I'd fly down and send everything back in the mail. Well, with pills not really having a smell, and this was before 9/11, where they was scanning everything, you could pretty much send back as many as you could, as many as you wanted to. So I done it for the first time, as a trial run to see how it worked, and I had a lot of money put up, from selling cocaine for a few years to where it just got more and more and more. I mean, it's an addiction, really. If you think about it, OxyContins at that time was going for $25 to $30 a piece around here. Well, I could fly from Indianapolis and be in El Paso in 2 hours. And of course, he owned a cab company, so he would pick me up and take me to the airport. Well, with my travel costs and everything for OxyContin 40s, I had $7 a piece in them. And I'd go down there, grab them, stay the night, put them in the mail, send them next day delivery, hop on a 4-hour flight, come home, take a nap. Next day, they're knocking at my door, And, for example, if you take, if you're spending $7 and getting $21 out, that's 3 times your money. So, if you take $30,000 down there, 24 hours later, there's $90,000 at the door. And I pretty much, during the times of selling cocaine, I met a lot of bigger players in the game that had money that was willing to take as many as I could get. So within 24, 48 hours, I'd get rid of everything I had. And it was usually OxyContin, Xanax bars, and Valiums. And like the Xanax bars was 20 cents a piece, the Valiums 10 cents a piece. I mean, it was just an ungodly, there was so much room to make money.
I want to interrupt you right here, or I want to interject and say that you share this story with us. All of what you're sharing with us took place back when you were 15, 16 years old. How old are you now, Mike?
I'm 40.
And
I've been out of prison 10 years. I got caught with 78,000 pills in El Paso, Texas, on an anonymous phone tip from Richmond, Indiana, which was 2,000 miles or something like that away. And I got sentenced to 10 years down there. And due to me having a decent lawyer and me being all the way from the state of Indiana and not having no adult charges at that time, they transferred my time and my probation here. So I ended up getting 2 years work release here in my state and the rest to be served out in probation. But then, toward about 4 years into my probation, I caught a Dillon charge. A girl I'd known for 20 years called me, "Bub, I'm on heroin, I want to get off this shit, I don't know what else to do." And I got her some methadone pills. And then she calls me a couple of days later, "All these are doing great, but I can't sleep." Got her some Xanaxes. 16 months later, she got me. She got 72 of us. Pretty much wiped out everybody that was really doing anything in the whole town.
And how much time would you end up getting for that?
6 years.
You share this story with us, and it's not to really glorify your past. It's to really, share what you've been through. And there's a bigger point to all of this that we're going to get to toward the end of this video. And there's going to be people who probably don't believe some of these things that you're saying. You've sent me paperwork through messages of your actual charges. There's also going to be people who say that, you got, how did you end up with just that little bit of time with, what did you say at first? It was 78,000 pills?
I got 10 years for that. And I had never had an adult record.
Also, you've dealt with some addiction problems yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes, I have. I didn't touch drugs till I was about 24.
And, briefly talk to us about your addiction history and where you are now with that.
Well, I got diagnosed with a thing called psoriatic arthritis, which affects your joints, pretty much all the joints in your body, and causes severe pain. So even before I was doing drugs, I was going to a chronic pain clinic, and they started me out. I ended up taking I think it was 4 Lorset 10s a day or something. I'd done that for 3 years, and it just wasn't helping anymore, And here I am. I got thousands of these Oxycontins, laying around. So I tried one of them one day, and it killed all the pain, made me feel good, and it was off to the races.
Well, you would deal with the addiction. You would get wrapped up with the pills You know, do you still use any kind of pills now? Like talk about where you're at with usage.
I've been clean 3 years. Well, some people say that I haven't been clean because I'm on Suboxone. I am on Suboxone. But a lot of that is Suboxone does have a small amount of opiate in it, and it does help me with the chronic pain. But I've been on Suboxone for a year and a half now.
And you're prescribed to this. I mean, this is something that you're allowed to do.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
You know, I want to talk about these 6 years that you served in prison because there was a lot of really crazy stuff that took place during the time that you served. And, you know, I want you to start walking us through your time incarcerated.
Well, obviously I went to Newcastle Correctional Facility, which was a GEO. I don't know if you guys have it out there. It's a privately owned prison. And at the time, half the prison was Arizona inmates and half of it was Indiana inmates. And I had gotten there right after the big riot broke out, which you can Google that or whatever. It was a pretty bad riot. You know, I knew a lot of people. A lot of my friends were there. Like I said, just in the one drug bust, the girl got 72 of us. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of homeboys there. There was a lot of people that I dealt with in other counties when I was doing, you know, selling drugs. So I mean, I had you know, a decent amount of people there I knew. You know what I mean?
And you said you got there, you knew a lot of people there. You know, talk to us about what that time would be like that you were serving and things that you would end up getting involved with. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you've shared with me some pretty crazy things that took place throughout those 6 years that you served.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've been in prison, of course. And, you know, here in Indiana, you go to a diagnostic center, which they pretty much, you're there for anywhere from 3 weeks to 31 days. And they pretty much, you know, look at your record, look at your age, see if you got any violent stuff on your packet, stuff like that. And they base it on a point system, you know what I mean? And they try to get you close to home, which it was about 40 minutes from my house. That's how I ended up there. Well, I walk into Newcastle Prison. It's a dorm setting at the time. And I walk in, and my bunk's upstairs, and I walk upstairs, and they're kicked back on the bunk, smoking blunts, snorting cocaine, and me talking on cell phones. I say this because it's no longer like that. You know, first time being in prison, I'm like, man, what in the hell, man? This is going to be gravy. Well, you know, I get there, and I get into the kick of things, get to talking to people. Well, come to find out, a few of my real good friends are affiliated, you know what I mean? And you know, I've watched your show and other prison shows, and you know, some states are segregated, some ain't. Well, Indiana is segregated to a point. I mean, you know, you eat with your own race. I mean, you hang out with your own race. You bunk with your own race. You don't really bunk with other races. But that in itself don't make you a racist. But a couple of my friends was affiliated in an organization. It was the second largest organization in our state, and I believe South Carolina, I believe it's a pretty big organization. It wasn't really based on race. You know what I mean? It was a bunch of clean-cut white boys getting money, taking care of each other as kind of family away from home. Like I said, I mean, we went with the prison rules or politics, as you want, you know, however you want to call it, and you know, kind of blended in with our own. But when it come to getting money or anything like that, you know, we dealt with whatever color, you know what I mean? I mean, some of the other organizations, you know, the Spanish organizations and stuff, were some of the most honorable people I've ever dealt with, you know what I mean? So I was never one. I grew up around a lot of colored guys. One of my best friends growing up was a black guy. So I mean, I sat back for a while and watched, because I was approached by 3 different organizations, one of them being the largest, and one of them being very racial. And I'm sure you know who that is. And I'm not saying, you know, to each his own is how I feel about it. But it wasn't for me. So, and I'm not one, you know, I'm 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, got some hands on me. You know what I mean? I'm not one that got affiliated for protection. You know what I mean? I had plenty of homeboys, you know what I mean? I can handle myself, you know what I mean? It was nothing like that. It was just the brotherhood bond, you know what I mean? And everybody was getting money, and you really, you know, you hear about people bringing stuff in. It don't come along that easy. It's really hard to get a mule, you know. And I happened to cop one. They happened to put me in a dorm where I ended up hooking up with a female CO. And she ended up gaining a lot of feelings for me. And she was seeing another guy that had been down for 23 years. And she had been muling for him, and nobody knew about it until me and her got to talking. I'm a different person now, obviously. You know what I mean? I'm 40 years old. I pretty much snatched this mule from him, you know what I mean? And first thing she brought me was some tobacco and a cell phone where I could talk to her at night. And I was very manipulative back then. And, you know, talking to her at night, you know, love you, and, you know, we're going to be together when we get out, you know. And shitball as it is to say, you know, that was never my intentions, you know what I mean? I was just trying to live good in there.
I want to jump in here real quick, Mike. You were talking about, you know, you met this correctional officer, this female guard, and you mentioned a mule. She was a mule. She was muling for another guy, meaning bringing the pack in, whatever that may be, the tobacco, the drugs, the cell phones. And she was dealing with another guy who you would end up coming between that relationship and getting her for yourself. You know, talk about what would end up coming of that situation, because obviously he would probably find out about this, and I can't imagine he was too happy to hear that you had his girl.
Yeah, it definitely caused me some problems. And it happened to be that he was the second biggest boy on camp. I mean, he worked out every day, you know what I mean? You've been there, and you know how them guys are. It's got big, long sentences, you know what I mean? They try to get healthy, and it definitely wasn't the one, you know what I mean, if I could have picked that I was going to have to fight, or, you know, whatever it was going to come to. It definitely wasn't the one I would have picked, you know what I mean? It took about a week for him to find out, and once he found out, you know what I mean, he's sending threats to my dorm, and I'm affiliated at this time, and there's a process you go through, you know, you can't just, you know, fight. So he goes to my president at the time and says, hey, look, you know, your brother disrespected me, and you know, we need to handle this. So we set up a time in a dorm and all this stuff, and it was supposed to be 11:30 at lunchtime. Well, I was in another dorm, and I only had one brother and a probate with me in this dorm. Well, about 9:30 in the morning, my brother comes over and shakes my bed, and he's like, look, man, you need to get up and put your shoes on. and you already know what time that is. I'm like, why, what's up? What's going on? And he was like, I'll go ahead and say the guy's last name was Law. And he was like, man, Law, in Newcastle, they had quiet rooms, which you were supposed to be able to go in and be quiet and read, you know, do whatever you need to do. But it was all off camera. That's where people would go to fight. So he said, man, Law's in the quiet room with his shirt off. Bouncing around saying he needs to talk to you. So I already knew what time it was. And I didn't know how, you know, I have no hawk, nothing like that. I figured this man's been down 23 years. He just come from Pendleton, which is the bigger prison in the state for like lifers and shit. I don't know if his level dropped or what. And I mean, he's truly in love with this girl. I mean, he wasn't just telling her what he wants and what he wanted her to hear. He's truly in love with this girl. So I'm thinking, oh shit. So we go in there and we handle and shit, and I get the best of him, and he taps out, and I ain't like no badass. I think I done that out of fear. I think that adrenaline and fear was running is the only reason I got him. You know what I mean? About 5 days later, he goes back, gets drunk, gets on his cell phone, calls the prison, and tells on me, her, and him. So the next morning, they come and get me and put me in SEG and put me in for immediate transfer. They fire her and send him off somewhere else. So I was in SEG for 63 days waiting to be transferred. Here they call it STG transfer, which is security threat group. You know, if you're affiliated or whatever. A miniature riot had broke out between my brothers and a black organization. So they needed a SEG room. So they put me back on the yard. So I was in that prison for another year at least.
You know, with this girl that you're talking about, the mule, the female guard, you know, this would be a relationship that you would have with this girl, and she would be bringing you in the pack as well. But, you know, wasn't there something along the lines of, is this the woman that you told me that you had actually gotten pregnant while you were locked up?
I said I said up there, they moved me to the medical dorm because I broke my ankle. And up there in the medical dorm, it was just a lot of older guys or guys that was injured, had been stabbed. You know, they'd move you up there from anywhere from 3 days to 3 months. You know, guys that was on sleeping machines, you know, just people that had to be monitored or took care of because it was close. It was the building closest to the infirmary. Well, she happened to be working there, and actually she got transferred up here now that I think about it. And they had a laundry facility. They had their own washer and dryer in a closet, in this huge closet. And they had a staff bathroom that you could sneak off into. And yeah, you know, I mean, we was doing our thing, and she ended up getting pregnant.
And this was prior to her getting fired, obviously.
Yes, yes.
You know, what was that like, though, while she was working there? Like, how long would it be between the time that she got pregnant and then the time that she got fired? Did she go through, like, this whole pregnancy while still working there?
No. It lasted, the whole thing between me and her lasted probably 4 or 5 months. And she got pregnant probably 3 months into it.
And then she ended up getting fired. And when she got fired, you know, would you still be in contact with her? Was she still your girl?
No, she wasn't my girl. She definitely, man, I sound like a shitball saying something. She was a bigger girl with low self-esteem. I mean, that's just the mule type. That's the ones that they prey on. You know what I mean? The low self-esteem, you know what I mean? And the ones that ain't so pretty. The ones that you can tell them stuff that they ain't never heard before, you know what I mean? And no, it definitely wasn't something that I was going to be with when I got out. Now, I did go break her off once because I felt like I owed her that, you know what I mean? Because the girl truly did love me, man. She done a lot for me. I'm sorry I had to put that in. You told me to keep it 100. I mean, I'm keeping it 100.
Look, Mike.
I might even broke it off twice. You know what I mean? But
what about the child in this situation? Like, are you a part of the child's life? Is the child? What about the child?
She aborted the child.
Oh. Look, let's switch gears. There's so much that we could focus on with your story, and we're kind of just like rolling through it, and it definitely is going to open the door for, you know, a continuation to hear more from you. At least that's what I'm hopeful of. Mike, you shared with me something else that I want you to spend some time on, and that was, you know, the fact that you made a lot of money while you were in prison. One particular thing that you shared with me was that you made $17,000 while in prison. Talk to me about this specifically, how you did this, and just what all was behind this particular fact right here.
I made more than $17,000 because I was buying phones, I was buying drugs, I was sending money home, I was helping other people out, you know what I mean? So I'd say roughly $22,000, and that was just in that prison, you know what I mean? I just for one, the mule, you know, the 5 month run I had with the mule was great, you know what I mean? Because hell, a flip phone in there is $450, the cheapest, you know, cell phone you can get. And I had numerous ones of them, MP3 players. I mean, I made a lot of money off this woman. A lot of money. I had her going and picking up packages from my buddies on the streets, which, you know, I'm sure you can, you know, pills and Suboxones and heroin, cocaine. I mean, I made a lot of money. And you know, with me being affiliated, you know, we also had protection money, you know, there was people that had to pay taxes as far as child molesters, and you know, we didn't prey on our own kind or nothing like that, but there was a lot of opportunity in that prison, a lot of opportunity.
You know, you brought up a good point, and I want to focus on this a little bit. You talked a little bit about getting affiliated or the different organizations that were at the prison you were at. How did if you're even able to share this, like how did the affiliation process go? Are you having to be jumped into this? Like, talk to me about.
No. I probated for 6 months, which consisted of working out, doing essays, memorizing bylaws and history, history on the organization. I was never jumped in or asked. I was never asked to do anything that none of my brothers would do. I was never sent on no dummy missions. I mean, I felt kind of like I was a high asset, and the heads kind of recognized that because I had a mouthpiece. I moved around. At one point, I become a church clerk. Where I had access to the whole prison, any dorm, any building, any pod, to where I could move, I could move whatever around. I mean, I just always, like I said, I've been a hustler from an early age, man. And I just always knew how to move, you know what I mean? Knew how to make shit happen, and they recognized that. And I mean, I wasn't greedy, you know what I'm saying? I was willing to share that.
You know, something else, with the fact that you would become affiliated, you mentioned paying taxes, the extortion money, basically, paying for protection. I want you to talk about, this is something that I don't know anything about. I'd really be curious to know about it myself. But like with the sex offenders in particular, like how does that whole process go of them paying for protection? How much money do they have to pay in protection? And, you know, what does that guarantee them, if anything?
We never offered sex offenders protection. As far as I'm concerned, that's the bottom scum of the earth, and we never offered them that. It was more of young, frail kids that was being picked on by other races, other organizations. Homeboys come in that just can't handle themselves. They're just not cut out to be in prison. It was more of on them lines. As far as sex offenders go, smash on sight. You know what I mean? I mean, I have nothing for them. To me, they don't deserve commissary. Every time they went to commissary, they're coming off of it. I mean, and it wasn't just us. We had an alliance with the. I said we was the second largest. We had an alliance with the first largest organization in the state at the time. I mean, we was all on the same page when it comes to that.
And let's talk a little bit about like the guy that is paying for protection, the frail guy, the scared guy. Like, what is the average, or just give me a number of what's he paying per week or per month?
$50 a week.
How much?
$50 a week.
I'm just curious. I never knew, and that's a pretty steep margin right there. Y'all ain't leaving that dude nothing, are you?
Oh no, these boys have money. You know what I mean? Like I said, it might vary, you know what I mean? But the ones that have money, you know what I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm paying for protection. I'm not, the paying for protection, extortion, that's all different categories, and what you're going to pay is based on, what you're capable of, what your people is capable of sending or whatever, you know what I mean? But, I'm not going to leave somebody with nothing to eat. You know what I'm saying? That's just bullshit. But, that $50 could be paid off in, your family sending me 30 and, here, take this across camp, or, you know what I mean? Let me get these next, these hamburger trays for the next 2 weeks, or, you know what I mean? It didn't always have to be cash.
Mike, you served 6 years, and there's so much to your story that we could focus on in relation to that, and we've kind of briefly ran through it. But this was 10 years ago that it's, separating you from the time that you served. I want to talk about you getting released and, how that affiliation still impacted your life, because some very crazy things would happen and things that you would realize after you got released in terms of, well, just that, the affiliation that you had.
Yeah. For me, and I believe I know my brothers, and I've talked to people of other organizations, black, white, Hispanic. I'm not saying every organization's on what these organizations on, but I was sold a lot of dreams, man. And I've been president in two different prisons and on the streets. I wasn't just a hang around, kick me around. I went to the highest you could go. I missed my father's funeral over this, My dad died, and they was going to let me go to the funeral as long as my family paid for it. And I come from a wealthy family before I got blackballed and black sheep for getting in all the trouble I've been in. But due to safety and security of the institution, they called it, I didn't get to go to my father's funeral. You know what I mean? And that right there is when I started thinking, and some of the shady shit, people going against our bylaws. We're not allowed to shoot dope and run up dope debts, and and I don't care what anybody says it's affiliated. So none of my brothers ever checked in owing. Every organization's got somebody that's checked in owing something, and then here we are responsible for it. You know what I mean? Especially when I was president. Like I said, especially chow hall, everybody sits with their own race. But when you see a white boy, when a CO sees a white boy that knows, and every CO, don't get it messed up. Every CO knows who's the president of each organization of each race. And when a CO sees a white boy get up that he knows is a president or affiliated of an organization, go plumb across the chow hall and sit down with the president of a black organization, they're politicking something out. You know what I mean? They leave it alone here in Indiana. That, or, we'll go to church and politic.
So you say that, there was a lot of just crazy things that you were starting to realize that were taking place within the organization. And I guess this would start to make you feel like this wasn't something you wanted to be a part of anymore.
Right. Well, when I got out, the things that I seen, especially from my elders, I wasn't feeling it, man. And I kept contacting my elders saying, hey, look, this needs to change. We need to do something about this. We had monthly meetings, regardless of whether they was 10 miles away or 60 miles away. You're supposed to be at. If you didn't have a ride, somebody get you there. And the first one, there was 200 people there. By the 12th one, there was 30 people there, and them 30 looked like they'd lost 20 pounds since the last time I seen them. You know what I mean? And the stories I heard, I let one parole to my house he was a homeboy and a brother, and within 2 months, he done robbed 3 houses in my neighborhood. Me and him got in an actual fist fight because he was calling me soft that I wouldn't go out and kick in doors with him. You know what I mean? I have a wife and a five-year-old kid. You know what I mean? I ain't on that shit no more. I've been out 10 years. You know what I mean? I'm not on that. And he got mad about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't for me. So I went to my actual founders, what we call it, and said, look, you can send boys to cover this patch, not to sound like a badass, but you might want to send a few, or you can let me retire it. You know what I mean? I'm over a 10-year patch holder, and he let me retire it. So I retired it, and I haven't looked back, and I don't mess with them now. My advice to anybody that goes to prison, if you can stand on your own or with your hometown or whatever, stay there, man. That affiliation shit, it might be for some, but it ain't for most.
Mike, I want to wrap this up because we've already made this pretty long, and I hope people are definitely intrigued and interested to hear more of your story, and it's my hope to be able to feature more of it upcoming. But as we wrap this up, you wanted to share your story for an important reason, and that was because you feel like your story could help the younger people who could potentially end up going down or are going down a road similar and a path similar to yours. In closing, I'd ask you to wrap this up in a way where, you leave everybody with some final words from you.
Yeah, I always said that if my, 20 plus years of addiction and probably 16 years altogether of incarceration, if I could help one person with that, it wouldn't all be for nothing. And that's a lot of time spent in a person's life, man. I've been through hell and misery with prison and addiction. And obviously I can't go help people, in a lot of situations, and if I could just, if my story would touch, one person, it would make me feel like all the struggle and misery I've been through wasn't for nothing. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the chance to do that.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story. And again, it's my hope to do an update with you and to be able to chronicle more of it. You know, in the 10 years that you've been out, you say you've been clean for 3 years now, prescribed to the Suboxone, but you're doing well and you haven't had any type of trouble. And what do you think is the number one focus and the number one thing that keeps you having this 10 years of separation from your past?
I said, I just got tired, man. I mean, you know, tired of the drugs, you know, tired of that lifestyle, tired of being incarcerated, you know, tired of hurting the ones I love. I said, I'm an only child, you know. I done lost my dad, my best friend, you know. Me and my mom's all I got, and she's sick right now, you know. And, you know, if it wasn't for my daughter and my beautiful wife, I don't know where I'd be. I honestly don't know where I would be, you know. And you know, when I got clean almost 3 years ago, I mean, I had never been to no rehab or nothing. I just got tired and fed up, and I'm hard-headed like that. I don't go to meetings. I don't do none of that shit, but I stay clean, you know what I mean? And just, I don't want nothing to do with it. And you know, people give Remy a hard time on your show, you know what I mean? But relapse is a part of recovery, you know what I mean? And stress and shit like that, that's what causes people to want to get high. That's why people get high, is to numb that, you know what I mean? So if you do know addicts and people that's going through rough times, you know what I mean? Even if you don't feel that you have the words or something to embrace them, I mean, try, because you never know what might touch them and make them think about it before they go and get high. I mean, there's so much more to life, man, than drugs and that damn penitentiary. That penitentiary is terrible. You know that, Joe.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot more. I do hope you guys enjoy this. I do have a ton more to share. I mean, I've been down in Juarez, you know, Mexico, with $100,000 strapped to me, not knowing what the hell is going on. I mean, there's a lot more to it. So if you guys enjoy this, you know what I mean, give Joe his likes or whatever. Joe, get with me, and I'll tell you guys some wild shit. You know, this first time I'm doing this, I'm a little nervous. I ain't done this since I was on Jerry Springer. You know?
We didn't even talk about that. We never even talked about the fact that you were on Jerry Springer. We'll save that for the next time. Look, Mike, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this with us today. I greatly appreciate your time, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking with you again. And, you know, in the meantime, just keep doing what you're doing and keep living your life after prison, bro.
Oh, you already know. Believe me, I'm far from that. Drugs and prison. I don't want nothing to do with neither one of them. You keep doing what you're doing, Joe.
I appreciate it, man.
You're the reason we tune in, man. Don't be so stressed out. Don't worry about all these haters out here, buddy. You're doing great.
It is what it is. Mike, thank you for your time. I'm going to look forward to talking with you again real soon. And until then, man, just keep doing what you're doing.
You too, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.